You gotta invite people, okay? I know folks are at home watching stuff online, but you gotta get them back, bring them back to church, invite them. If you were here last week, I told a joke that was not funny. No one laughed at my joke last week. If you were here, and the reason is my wife made me change the punchline of the joke right at the last minute. She said I couldn't use the word half naked in church. I couldn't say that. And so that just threw the whole joke off. And later when I got home, I reminded her that there is a lot of nakedness in Genesis. And she goes, yeah, but they weren't half naked in Genesis, okay? So anyway, I'm gonna try a new joke today and see if we can't get you to laugh, okay? Are you ready to have some fun? Okay, so I heard about this fella, young high school kid. Prom was coming up and he wanted to go to prom so bad. And he was so nervous to ask this very beautiful girl, but he finally worked up the nerve to ask her, and she said yes, she would go. And he was so thrilled. He was so thrilled, he immediately went to the school office to buy the prom tickets. But when he got there was a long line of students already buying them, and he had to wait like 30 minutes before he got his prom ticket. Then the next day, he knew he had to go get fitted for a tuxedo, so he went to the tuxedo shop. And again, when he got there was a long line of other fellas getting fitted for tuxedos. So it took him like 2 hours before he was able to get his tux fitted. Then he remembered, I need to go order the young lady a corsage, so he went to the florist, and again, there was a long line at the florist, and he had to wait about 30 minutes before he could order the flower. But then the big night of the prom came, he went to pick her up, they drove to the school gym, but there was a metal detector that all the students had to go through, and of course they had to stand in another long line. Once they got in, he said, excuse me, but I need to go to the restroom. And she said, fine. And he goes to the restroom. And again, there was a super long line. He had to wait. When he finally got out of the restroom, there's a big crowd of people that is gathered around his date because she is now passed out on the floor for some reason. She's passed out and people are screaming, we need to get her something to drink. Go get her something to drink. So he runs over to the punch table, and guess what? There was no punch line. There you go. Not funny enough? There was no punchline, and he was half naked. There you go. There you go. That's an oldie. And I love it when I'm telling a joke that you already know and you just want to yell out the punchline. Some of you did that. Do not do that ever again. That messes me up. All right, there's a lot of people in here that hadn't heard that joke before, okay? All right. If you've been with us since the beginning, you know, our church was planted in 2012, and so we're coming up on 10 years. Oh, is this our 10th year? We're going to have a big 10th year celebration. That'll be in April. Oh, man, what are we talking about today? Oh, I'm calling the sermon today, Now What? Now What? And you're probably going, what does that mean? And so I brought us a video demonstration so you can get the concept of what I'm trying to convey to you about Now What. So here is from my favorite cartoon of all time, Finding Nemo. Don't you love it? All right, here we go.
You see that filter?
Yeah?
You're the only one who can get in and out of that thing. What we need you to do is take a pebble inside there and jam the gears. You do that, and this tank's gonna get filthier and filthier by the minute. Pretty soon, the dentist will have to clean the tank himself. And when he does, he'll take us out of the tank, put us into individual baggies, then we'll roll ourselves down the counter, out the window, off the awning, into the bushes, across the street, and into the harbor. It's foolproof.
Nice and steady.
I got it!
Barbara, I don't understand it. Here this thing has a lifetime guarantee and it breaks. I had to clean the tank myself, take all the fish out, put them in bags and... Where'd the fish go?
Come on, Pete!
Come on. You got it, that's it. You can do it.
That's the shortest red line I've ever seen.
Come on, Peach.
Oh.
Now what?
There you go. Now what? Now what? Everybody in this room has now what moments. A lot of you this morning are having them right now. And the concept that we want to talk about today is, what do you do in your now what moments? Did I have a slide that just says now what? Now what? Now what? Now what is, what do you do when there's nothing you can do? What do you do when there's nothing you can do? Like your health is failing, right? And you go to the doctor and they can treat it, but they can't cure it, right? And you're like, am I going to have to live with this for the rest of my life? Now what, right? Or the bills are piling up and you're not getting a raise at work and you don't see one coming in the future and the bills are just getting bigger and bigger and the groceries are going up and gas, and you're like, what am I going to do? I don't see a way out of this. Now what? What do I do now? Or you lost your job. Maybe your job was your purpose. You know, that's what you identified with, and now you don't have a purpose anymore. And you're like, now what? What am I going to do? Or are you struggling in a marriage? Some of us might be, right? And you're not going to change, and she's not going to change, and you're like, I guess this is the way it's going to be? Now what? What do I do when there's nothing I can do? Maybe, you know, we have folks that have lost the love of their life that come to our church, right? And they're like looking to the future, and they've not lived life by themselves forever, and they're thinking, what am I going to do? Now what? What do you do? You know, when you know, if you look in the New Testament at the people who brought us the story of Jesus Christ, you're going to see that they never had a difficult time with God when they were having difficulties in life. They still believed in a good, loving God. Nowadays, it seems like a lot of people struggle with the idea that how can God be good and so loving, but all this is happening to me? But when you look at the New Testament, at the people that lived and knew Jesus, they didn't have that issue. They could navigate life knowing that it was difficult for everyone, but there still be a good and loving God. The Apostle Paul, if you know anything about the Apostle Paul, he wrote a big chunk of our New Testament. Some put it in the estimate of 13 of those letters in your New Testament was preserved in antiquity. It was collected together. It was put in your New Testament, and you're actually reading letters that the Apostle Paul wrote to a lot of churches that he planted. You may not know much about Paul, but he started out as a Christian killer. Actually, he was a Pharisee, very religious Jewish man who saw people that believed in Jesus as heretics, blasphemers, and he volunteered to work for the high priest on behalf of the temple system to go out and round up the Christians and kill them or to bring them to justice. But then he has this Damascus Road intervention where he is struck blind, he hears the voice of Jesus, and then he becomes one of the greatest apostles of all time. He would be literally the guy who would take the gospel message of Jesus to the Gentile world all around the Mediterranean rim. And Paul, hand chosen by God, you know God loves him, God cares about him, has an issue. He has difficulties in life, just like we do. But he didn't have a problem still believing in a good and loving God, even though he was having difficulties. One of the difficulties he had was, we're told in the New Testament, they had a thorn in his flesh. Now, he never tells us exactly what it was, and I think that's beautiful, because no matter what you're going through or whatever you think your thorn in your flesh is, you can relate to Paul. All we know is whatever it was very painful, it was debilitating, and it was also I can't say that word. Humiliating, thank you. That's why I have my family sit on the front row, so they can help me out. Humiliating. You know why it was humiliating? Because Paul could literally go into anybody's house, somebody on the street, touch them, and they would be healed through God's power through him, right? He could heal people. Matter of fact, there's a story in the New Testament where somebody just got one of his handkerchiefs and took his handkerchief to somebody who was sick, and people were getting healed just by touching his handkerchief, right? And so it's got to be humiliating that you can heal people or be used by God to heal other people, but you can't heal yourself. How embarrassing would that have been, right? But that's one of Paul's difficulties in life. But he still had no problem believing in a good and loving God. He knew God loved him. And so it didn't change his confidence in that. And so today, I thought, man, this guy has some good things he could teach us. He wants to teach us today the secret to having contentment in your life when you're in the now what moments of it, when you're struggling. So about 10 years into Paul's ministry, he gets arrested. And he is arrested in Rome. He's put under house arrest. And at the time, the emperor of Rome was a guy named Nero. And if you've never heard of Nero, this was one bad dude. He's the guy that would feed the Christians to the lions. You've heard that. He's also the guy who would take Christians, have them dipped in oil, then he'd lasso them to a post, plant the post in his garden while they were still alive. He'd light them on fire to light his garden at nighttime. He was a horrible, horrible man. At this point in history, with Nero in charge, Paul in prison, it looked like Rome had won, Jesus has lost. There's no way, because Paul is the main guy responsible for getting the gospel message of Jesus out to the world, but now he is arrested. And if you're Paul and if it was us, we would go, what's the problem, God? I thought I was your main guy. I thought you called me to go do this. How can I do anything? He didn't do that. He didn't complain while sitting in prison in a now what moment. You know what he decided to do? He decided, you know what? There is something I can do, even though it looks like to the world there's nothing I can do. He says, I can write some letters. I can write letters to the churches I've already planted, encourage them. I think it's crazy that this guy sitting in prison under Nero, probably going to die, decides, I think I'll go write some letters to encourage people, right? And that's what he does. He writes 4 letters, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, and Philemon, which are known as, in church, as the prison epistles. And little did he know how much these letters that he was writing in a now what moment, in that moment where I can't do anything, he decides to do something. He had no idea how impactful these letters were going to be on the whole world. They are one of the most widely translated writings in the history of our planet. He had no idea how God was going to use those letters to talk to you and to talk to me. This morning, we're going to look at one of them. For me, it's an incredible story. It's just an incredible story. Here's just some of the things he wrote while in prison, okay? And we're not going to dwell on any of them, but I just want to show you just a couple things he wrote while in a now what moment. Now what am I going to do? What am I going to do? He wrote this: do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your request to God. He's in prison when he's writing that. For people that had the wrong picture of God, which causes all kinds of problems, he would write this. He says, God looks like Jesus Christ. The Son is the image of the invisible God. Okay, when you lose your picture of what God is, I want you to remember that the Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. And ladies, here's something Paul wrote. You should like this. While in prison under Nero, he wrote, husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. Ladies, aren't you glad Paul got sent to prison so he could write that? Paul had no idea what hung in the balance of him remaining faithful to the concept that God is good and God loves him and God cares about him and God can use you in whatever moment you are in your life. He didn't lose his faith. I mean, think about this. What are the odds that letters that Paul wrote, only one copy, even make it out of Rome and get to their destination? And then what are the odds that if they do miraculously somehow get out of Rome and make it to their destination, what's the odds that they will be held on to and preserved and taken care of for over 2,000 years so that you and I could still read them? What are the odds of that happening? You know, kings and emperors, Nero had lots of writings, we're told by historians, but most of his writings didn't make it, didn't last through history. And these kings and these emperors, they had multiple copies. They had scribes that would copy their writings multiple times. They would lock them away in vaults. They went to great lengths to preserve them. But we have very few writings from kings and emperors during this time. But we have the letters of Paul, only one copy, given to a guy. Paul's going, I hope it makes it. I hope it gets there. And it got there, and it's been saved, and we can now read them together. I think it's just an amazing, amazing story. Anyway, so while Paul is under arrest in Rome, writing these letters, one of the churches that he planted, it was a church in Philippi, sends him a care package, the Philippian church, and we know this because in a letter he writes, he's responding back to, hey, thanks for the care package you sent me. We don't know what they sent him. I always think they probably sent him did they have toothbrushes back then? Or just do the finger? In Kentucky, we just use the finger. Afro Kentucky. Anyway, the toothpaste, back then, maybe some jerky. They had jerky for sure. Maybe he got a blanket. We don't know what was in the care package, but they sent it to him while he was under house arrest in Rome. And this is what he writes in his letter back to the Philippian church. He says, I rejoice greatly in the Lord that at last you renewed your concern for me. He's like, thanks. Indeed, you were concerned, but you had no opportunity to show it. He's like, I'm glad you guys hadn't forgot about me. I was sitting here going, I wonder if I made an impact, and here's these Philippians send him a care package. He goes, man, you guys, I thank you. You didn't forget about me. And then he uses this opportunity to launch into a subject called contentment. In other words, how can you be content in the midst of your now what moments, right? He uses this as an opportunity. So he says, thanks for the package, thanks for the care package. And he goes on, he says, I'm not saying this because I'm in need, okay, for I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. In other words, I'm glad you remembered me, I'm glad for the care package, but don't get me wrong, I'm not glad because I was afraid, and I'm not glad because I was full of anxiety thinking I was getting ready to die. You see, he goes, I've learned the secret to being content no matter what the circumstances are in my life. I've learned to deal with it. I've learned to deal with it. I've learned that no matter what's going on the outside, you can have peace on your insides, right? Now, we could stop here today and let you go home, or if you're interested, we could look at what the secret is. So, because I think we all need a little contentment in our lives, because we're all currently in this room living in some kind of now what moment. Every one of us in this room. And so here's what he says. Here's the secret. He says, he goes, I know what it is to be in need. Okay, I've been where you've been. I know what it is to have plenty. He's had money in his past. He says, I've learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. And I was looking at that word secret. It is a Greek word he wrote this letter in Greek, and the word that he used was a secular Greek word for the word secret here that's not used anywhere else in the New Testament, according to BibleGateway.com. The Greek word that he used is never used again in all the New Testament because it was a secular word, and it was kind of a mystical word. It meant like, when he said secret, it's like the secret society. There's a club you can join. It's kind of mystical. And I got the secret, And we're like, okay, Paul, what's the secret? Like he wants the people that are reading this letter to draw closer. Like, what is it? What's the secret? And then Paul writes one of the most famous verses in all the New Testament. And you've heard it. But it's also one of the most misapplied verses in all the New Testament also, because it's been yanked way out of context. Because what is the context that Paul is going to write this next verse? He's in prison under Nero. He's probably going to die, and he's trying to encourage other churches, right? That is the context of which he's writing the secret to contentment in your now what moments. But people have yanked this way out of context. Right? And so here's the secret. I'm ready to show you. Are you ready? Here we go. He says this in verse 13. I can do all this. You already know what it is, right? Do you know what Paul has been through up to this point when he's writing this? I can do all this. What this, Paul? I've been beaten. I've been shipwrecked. I've been beaten again. I've been snake bit. I've been left for dead outside of a city. They finally revived me. You know what? I got up and I went back in. Right? I've been arrested multiple times. Now I'm arrested in Rome under Nero, probably going to die. But I can do all this through him. And the him he's talking about, King James says, through Christ who gives me strength. Paul says there's a secret, and it's available to believers, right? It's a special secret society. I got a secret. And the secret is you can do life with Christ in you. You have available to you the strength of Jesus Christ. It's available to you, and it's available to me. And Paul says, I can do all this. I can do Rome. I can do Nero. I can do the shipwrecks through Christ who gives me strength. Now, let me show you what Paul was not talking about, okay? I can do all things, right, through Christ who gives me strength. I see these all the time. You've seen them. We got them on our coffee cups, right? I can do all things at work. I can get the job done. I'm going to make schedule. We're going to make budget. We're going to win the game, right? I'm not saying these pictures are bad. They're well-meaning pictures. But I think if the church of Philippi had wrote a letter back with these pictures, hey, Paul, we get what you were saying. We could do all things. I think Paul would go, are you guys kidding me? But that's not what I was talking about. I was talking about when your life is falling apart around you, when things are going crazy around you, you can still have contentment in you through Christ. It's not about winning a game. It's not about winning something. It's about surviving something. Right? I'm not talking about a slam dunk. I'm talking about being slammed down to the floor but still having the strength to get back up and take another step. I'm not talking about swinging a baseball bat. I'm talking about what do you do if you get hit with a bat and knocked down? You get up and you keep going. And I'm not saying any of these images are wrong. I'm just saying they just get ripped out of context. And we do that a lot. And when they get ripped out of context, we miss out on the secret. We miss out on the secret that is available to every one of us. That no matter what horrible things are going on in your life, that you can do all things through Jesus Christ, who will give you strength. That's the secret. Here's the secret in a real short sentence. When you can't, he can through you. When we can't and when you can't, he can through you. If you've lost somebody that the love of your life, several ladies that come here and several men that have lost their spouses, some recently, and you're like, I don't know what I'm going to do. How am I going to continue on? I've been used to a certain kind of way of living, and you're like, Lord, I don't know if I can do this. I want you to hear God tell you today that you can. That you can't, but he can through you. That when you can't, he can through you. If you're having difficulties at home, and every day you drive home, and you're not sure what version of her you're going to run into or what version of him is going to be at the door, and you're thinking, I don't know if I can do this much longer. I want you to hear God say, I know you can't, but I can through you. I know some are struggling so badly with finances right now, and you're just having a difficult time trying to make things ends meet with the bills, and you just don't see a way out. You don't see a future where you're just not always going to be under tremendous debt, and you're like, I don't know if we can keep on going like this. Maybe, and some of you may even be tempted to do unethical things and things that you'll regret later because you're going, I don't know if I can keep doing this. I want you to hear God tell you this morning, I know you can't, but I can through you. A lot of people come here that your health is failing, I know. And you've gone to the doctor, and you've gone to more doctors, and you're just now, you're in a situation of life where, okay, this is probably as good as it's going to get, and you're thinking, I don't know if I can live like this. I don't know if I want to live like this. And I just want you to hear God say, I understand, I know what you're going through, and I know you can't, but I can through you. It is the secret that you can have the life-giving power of Jesus Christ in your soul, in your heart, to help you get up every single day. There are many, many people, even in my own families, that struggle with addiction and alcohol and all kinds of things. You know, and when I talk to people that struggle with addiction, they all have the same thing in common. They all say, every single day I have to get up and I have to say no. It doesn't go away. The urge doesn't go away. Every single day I have to muster up the strength to say no, I'm not going to do that. And some days I just don't know if I can do it anymore. And I want you to hear God say, I know you can't, but I can through you. I can through you. That's the secret. If you take this secret that Paul wrote in prison under Nero, probably going to die, and apply it to your life, you'll be okay. No matter what's going on, no matter what your now what moment is. Let's go to the Lord in prayer today. Thank you, Father, for the words, the encouraging words of Paul. Thank you for the miraculous letters that have survived antiquity, Lord, that have made it into the most widely published book the planet has ever known, our Holy Scriptures, the Bible, our New Testament. And Lord, that we have access to these writings from this man that was picked by you on the road to Damascus to take the gospel message of Jesus to the world. And Lord, did he ever do it? He planted the churches, and then he wrote letters that would encourage them, and those letters now can encourage us thousands of years later. Lord, I just thank you for that miracle. I thank you for Paul. I thank you for all those, Lord, from that first century that worked so tirelessly through so many difficulties, but they lived knowing the secret to contentment, regardless of the difficulties of life. And they serve as an example to all of us today. So Lord, help us use that as we go through our life. I pray it all in Jesus Christ's name today. Amen. We're going to have a word of invitation. Leanne will lead us. You are my strength when I am weak. I thought that would be a good song today. And again, no matter what you're going through, you know, some of you have been visiting with us a while and you need a church home. And, you know, if you think this might be it, you could come and join our church. Some of you have been a Christian for a long time, but maybe you've never followed in baptism. We have a way of baptizing you, and the water will be warm. And baptism doesn't save you, but it is an outwardly expression of what's happened to you inside. That you've buried your old way of thinking in your old life, and you've been resurrected to a new kind of way of thinking and a new life in Jesus Christ. And so some of you may want to come and say, I want to be baptized. And some of you just want to come and say, I need prayer in my life. I'm going through some difficult stuff. And you can come and pray. You can kneel at the altar. We have people that will also pray with you if you need that. So would you stand and sing this with me today? And come if you will.